Tonight, the alleged terror plot disrupted by police on both sides of the border. The encrypted messaging apps and the details of a planned attack in New York City.
This fellow fell into that virtual world that was being monitored by the FBI.
The intelligence behind the investigation.
I sincerely hope he is extradited because the Americans treat this much more seriously than we do.
Wastewater data tracking Canada's toxic drug supply.
Vancouver has been known to have incredibly potent drugs, partly because it's an entryway into Canada.
The potentially deadly drug crisis flowing through major city streets. And the rolling stop. Cyclists look for their own rules of the road.
We need to change our laws so they can better address the needs of people using our roads.
Plus, showcasing prairie history and pride.
Never even dreamt that they would be worth what they're worth now.
A field of dreams, the antique machinery now restored and up for auction.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. There are serious questions tonight about a suspect and his now foiled terror plot, allegedly coordinated on Canadian soil but set to be carried out south of the border. The Pakistani citizen living in Canada faces terror-related charges here and in the U.S. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has been following the story for us. Jeremy, what more are we learning?
Heather, it's an alarming arrest, an alleged elaborate plan for a mass shooting of Jewish people in Brooklyn. Authorities on both sides of the border say they worked together to make sure it didn't happen. 20-year-old Mohammed Shazib Khan is a Pakistani citizen who was living in Canada. The FBI says his arrest is the result of a months-long investigation.
During our investigation, we discovered Khan used encrypted messaging apps in planning a mass shooting attack at a Jewish site in New York City.
Court documents allege Khan started showing support for ISIS on social media in 2023. He's accused of planning to use automatic and semi-automatic weapons to carry out a mass shooting on or around October 7th, the one-year anniversary of the Hamas massacre in Israel. The FBI says his goal was to kill Jewish people in the name of ISIS.
We have not been able to completely eliminate the threat coming from ISIS. There are individual actors performing or trying to perform such attacks also in the West, and this is something we have to be on the lookout for.
The 20-year-old was arrested earlier this week in Ormstown, Quebec, near the U.S. border by the RCMP. He's facing a number of terrorism-related charges, both in Canada and the U.S. He's set to appear in court on September 13th in Montreal, but U.S. officials are now seeking his extradition.
It's a reality that Canadians have to realize and that our security intelligence agencies like CSIS, where I worked in the RCMP, have to get on top of.
Earlier this summer, a father and son were arrested on terrorism charges, accused of planning a violent attack in Toronto.
It's going to even ask more questions about our immigration system, and more importantly, what is the screening process involved by CSIS and other agencies to prevent individuals with these types of ideologies from gaining access to our territory.
Now, little is known still about Khan. We know he traveled from the Toronto area to Quebec by car before trying to cross into the U.S., but it isn't clear how he got to Canada, why he was here, or how long he's been here. Immigrations Canada wouldn't confirm his residency status with us. Heather?
CTV's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Tributes are pouring in following the death of Grand Chief Cathy of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs.
She should be shown as we remember her, standing strong and supporting our people and our communities.
Merrick took over the helm of the Chiefs Assembly in 2022 and was the first woman elected to the role. She collapsed yesterday outside the Law Courts building in Winnipeg while talking to reporters. Manitoba Premier Rob Canoe says Merrick will lie in state at the legislature in Winnipeg so people from across the province can pay their respects. RCMP in Nova Scotia have formally apologized to the province's Black community for the harms caused by the historic use of street checks.
I want to acknowledge and apologize for the far-reaching impacts of street checks. During our community visits, you told us, our kids are scared, and enough is enough.
The public apology to African Nova Scotians was delivered in North Preston, a predominantly black community near Halifax. Street checks, also known as carding, involve police randomly stopping people to record and store their personal information. In 2019, a report condemned the checks for targeting young black men. The practice is now banned in Nova Scotia. More than 8 years after BC declared a public health emergency, the province's toxic drug crisis rages on. Thousands of people have since died, most of them from the highly potent opioid fentanyl. And now new data shows just how much of it is flowing through the streets of major cities. Here's CTV's Kamal Karamali.
Most days, it's tough to miss the overt opioid use on Vancouver's streets.
A lot of product comes through the ports of Vancouver.
Now, new data shows the greater Vancouver area far outpaces other Canadian cities when it comes to fentanyl use.
It's this magnet that draws people in.
Statistics Canada measured norfentanyl in wastewater across the country. That's what forms after fentanyl is broken down in the body. It found Metro Vancouver had 4 to 5 times higher levels of norfentanyl on average compared to other cities. At its peak in the 2-year time period measured, Metro Vancouver had more than 46 milligrams of norfentanyl per day for every 100,000 people, roughly 8 times more than Edmonton and Toronto. By the end of 2023, an even bigger gap, with Metro Vancouver measuring more than 10 times the amount of norfentanyl.
People that I work with, they use fentanyl every day, no matter what. What fluctuates is how much actual fentanyl is in the drugs that they're buying. Your drugs are going to contain, on average, 3 to 6% fentanyl.
It's been more than 8 years since BC declared a public health emergency over the number of opioid deaths. Since then, more than 15,000 people have died from toxic drugs in the province. Police have displayed one drug bust after another, but still, the toxic drugs continue to flow through the streets.
When the police seize a drug supply and shut down dealers, that causes both increased violence as gangs and others will fight for that territory, and it removes safer options from the drug supply.
The Federal Mental Health and Addictions Minister's Office told CTV News it'll continue to support provinces, although would not provide any specifics. Meanwhile, advocates continue to call on more harm reduction sites and legalization. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Quebec is set to begin authorizing early requests for medical assistance in dying, even though Ottawa has yet to amend Canada's criminal code to allow it. The decision will allow patients to make advance requests before their condition leaves them unable to give consent. Quebec has asked Crown prosecutors to respect the change and not pursue criminal charges, but legal uncertainties remain.
In the current situation, when there are specific dispositions of the criminal code prohibiting this, I anticipate that a lot of the doctors will not feel comfortable going forward with advanced directives.
Quebec had previously said it would wait for the federal government to modify the criminal code. The changes are set to take effect October 30th. Ontario has confirmed its first domestic case of human rabies in more than 50 years. The patient now in hospital after testing positive for the virus. The man is believed to have been infected from direct contact with a bat in the Temiskaming region near Sudbury. Rabies is a viral infection that causes brain and spinal cord inflammation. The last confirmed case of domestic human rabies in Ontario was reported in 1967. Cyclists are often criticized for not following the rules of the road, and some advocates now say it's time bikers had their own set of laws, allowing them to roll through some intersections without stopping. CTV's Colton Prale explains.
Slow down, look both ways, but don't stop. Right now, it will get you a ticket, but cyclists in British Columbia are pushing to change that. This advocate calling on the province to allow what's known as Idaho stops or rolling stops, where stop signs act as yield signs for cyclists, only forcing them to come to a halt if there's oncoming traffic or a pedestrian crossing.
It reduces the amount of time a person cycling would spend in the intersection, and as a result reduces the opportunity of a conflict between different modes.
For cyclists like Cathy Smith, it's something she's already doing, especially on family rides.
I cycle a lot with my kids, and a kid takes a lot of time to get going, and every time you stop, you have to rebuild that, and it can be really scary if you're sharing the road with vehicles.
While illegal across Canada, rolling stops are allowed in 12 states, including Idaho, where research showed traffic injuries to cyclists dropped nearly 15% after the law was first introduced. In Canada, an average 74 cyclists are killed each year, including one in Toronto last week.
It's where you get to an intersection where either the intersection is not protected, it's confusing, or frankly, people are driving on their phones and not paying attention. That's when the real incidents that we see occur, resulting in really serious injury.
But the political will to make changes doesn't appear to be there. The BC Transportation Ministry says the current laws are already intended to keep everyone safe, and creating new regulations would require more research. Heather.
All right, Colton, thank you. Canadians looking to do research on their finances have been watching closely as the Bank of Canada follows its widely expected trend of cutting interest rates. With its third consecutive cut this week, mortgages are always top of mind, but there's much more to consider beyond home ownership. CTV's Christina Tenalia on what you should watch for in terms of your own bank account.
Jatinder and Sophia just bought a condo in Toronto's popular waterfront neighborhood. The latest interest rate cut means they can breathe a sigh of relief.
It's a bit of a relief, but at the same time very cautious of not overspending.
It's the third interest rate cut since June, and the first time the central bank has posted 3 consecutive reductions since the global financial crisis in 2009. And with more cuts expected this year, the new homeowners are optimistic.
Hopefully this is heading towards a good thing.
We're really just seeing the beginning of the relief. We haven't felt falling interest rates the way we have for a long time.
This advisor says borrowers who will benefit the most are those with variable rate borrowing, like a home equity line of credit, variable rate loans, or a variable rate mortgage. There's a challenge, though, for those who now have some extra cash that they used to spend on interest.
And you have to always ask yourself, why do I have more money?
How do you deploy if you have the extra cash? Do you put it against the debt? Do you put it towards savings? Do you put it towards some longer-term investments?
While it depends on your goals, it's best to revisit your budget and consider that the Bank of Canada cut won't benefit your savings, as your rate of return on products like GICs is tied to the central bank's interest rate.
There's certainly a need to refocus on your finances in a falling interest rate environment where in a rising interest rate environment, people are just trying to keep their head above water. Revisiting your budget, revisiting your income versus your expenses, paying down some debt that's at a higher rate.
Experts advise over the next 6 to 18 months is when Canadians will see more relief, slowly.
They're going to take a measured pace.
The Bank of Canada has 2 more interest rate announcements scheduled for this year. The next on October the 23rd, with the bank's governor not ruling out a 0.5 percentage point rate cut. The final announcement of the year is on December the 11th. Christina Tenalia, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up, store owners struggle as retail theft soars.
They'll come in and try to grab something, go out the door.
Which province has the highest rate of shoplifting? Plus, meet the antique collector with a passion for farm equipment. Shocking surveillance video has emerged from Toronto police showing the shooting death of an innocent bystander in a crowded plaza last month. Watch the left side of your screen. A car pulls up, a group of men get out and open fire indiscriminately into a busy plaza. A 21-year-old university student who was not targeted was fatally shot. Police say shoppers scrambled to take cover.
This is a very tragic situation of this cowardly act of these individuals firing a 100-meter distance with pistols is completely ridiculous and dangerous to dozens of people in that area at the time.
Police are trying to hunt down 3 suspects who fled the scene. The crime of shoplifting appears to be spiraling out of control in Canada. Retailers are facing losses in the billions, with businesses considering closing down for good. As CTV's Paul Hollingsworth explains, Nova Scotia has struggled the most with the surge.
The owner of this Halifax clothing store is not surprised shoplifting is on the rise in Nova Scotia, up 21% in 1 year.
I don't doubt it. I mean, I think in retail, that's a problem. Always has been for the 52 years we've been open.
Based on population per 1,000 people, Nova Scotia has the highest rate of shoplifting out of all 10 Canadian provinces. Yukon has a higher rate, but with a much smaller population. Ross McNeil and his staff maintain a watchful eye for thieves on a daily basis.
They'll come in and try to grab something, go out the door.
Retail analyst Bruce Winder says in tough economic times, people sometimes grow desperate and shoplifting often increases.
Everything from, homeless rate to unemployment rate, you'd have to look at average income.
The problem has become so serious that the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation has now pulled some products from the shelves, placing them in secure areas as a deterrent for would-be thieves.
If a store believes that a product is being taken more frequently than others, then they may make the choice to put it behind the shelf.
Theft has caused financial wreckage within the retail industry.
So, if you look in the United States, a number of big chains have actually closed stores.
Some store owners in Nova Scotia likely won't survive if shoplifting continues its upward trend. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead, maintaining sobriety through fitness. A former NHL player helps others on their journey towards a healthier life. A former NHL player is sharing his powerful path to sobriety. Brandon Reed's battle reached a tipping point 3 years ago. Now he's turned to fitness as a positive outlet with a new goal of helping others beat addiction. CTV's Kelly Gregg reports.
Come all the way to here. Boom.
This workout is more about mental fitness than physical. Brandon Reed is a recovering addict who's turning his life around.
One, good. When I tried to take my own life, almost 3 years ago, I had nothing. All the money I had made, all the relationships that I had, they were gone.
Comes up for Reed. Reed in there. Scores! From the outside, it looked like Reed had it all. A star with Team Canada at the World Juniors in 2000, then to the NHL for 3 seasons with the Vancouver Canucks.
Now back into by Reed, he scores! He's got his first in the NHL, Brandon Reed.
But the whole time, he was keeping a secret.
I knew I had a problem, but I had so much shame and guilt behind it, and I had such a big life and so many beautiful things that, I'm so in fear. You're so in fear that, asking for help is the hardest thing.
And that's the inspiration behind Fit, Not Lit, a program that uses working out as a path to getting clean.
We're going to go for 10. Yes, you can. Just like you could get sober, you can do this.
It took me 57 years to get 1 day of sobriety.
Client Mark Cahill started using at 12 years old. Along with addiction came anxiety and depression. He's been sober now for 3 years.
He was able to help me with a discipline of self and finding a balance in myself, which is what I needed.
Hold.
Jonathan Bucci is on the same path.
I actually OD'd in 2020, and my life was just, it was just a mess, absolute mess.
He's been sober for 3 months after his mother introduced him to Brandon.
Solid.
He says it's not just the routine that works, it's having someone to emulate who knows firsthand the struggle he's going through.
I think that was actually the one thing that has gotten me sober today was Brandon, to speak to guide me through this journey. I thought I'd be dead right now, to be truly honest with you. I'd be dead. I'd be dead if I didn't find Brandon.
For his clients, Reed is now the source of strength in moments of weakness. And that change is far more than physical.
And it feels really good to make them proud finally, 28 years old, making my parents proud. It feels fantastic.
Though he's on his own journey with sobriety, Reed is now helping others understand they don't have to carry that weight alone. Kelly Gregg, CTV News.
Canadian athletes are claiming more medals at the Paralympics in Paris. Wheelchair racer Austin Smink captured gold in his event. Swimmer Danielle Dory was victorious in the women's 50-meter final. Shelby Newkirk also secured a medal in the pool, winning bronze. And canoeist Brianna Hennessy is savoring her first Paralympic medal, a silver in the women's 200-meter sprint. We shared Hennessy's heartfelt story last month and this touching tribute to her late mother. A special paddle created with a cardinal, she says, represents the loss of loved ones in her family. It ended up being her good luck charm, propelling her to a Paralympic podium. From Paralympic glory to the glory days after the break. The man behind the machines putting vintage farm equipment up for auction. We leave you tonight with a Canadian collector and his skill for restoring antique machinery to its former glory. Part of his vintage collection dates back more than a century, honoring hard work and strong Saskatchewan family roots. Here's CTV's Allison Bamford.
With a little patience and some gasoline, this 1918 tractor still runs like new.
It's pretty peppy.
Clyde Hall started collecting and restoring old tractors 50 years ago.
This tractor is one of the first I collected.
Long before they were considered antiques. His oldest and biggest machine, this steamer from 1911.
It's 13 feet tall.
A construction worker by trade, tractors became his hobby, traveling across the country and into the United States to show off his collectibles.
People say, oh, why is he buying that old junk?
But that old junk inflated to treasure value. These machines, bought at scrap price, are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I just like the way it worked or the way it was built. That was the reasons for doing it. Never even dreamt that they would be worth what they're worth now.
You could say he came by it honestly. Hall's dad, a mechanic and farm equipment salesman, sparked his passion.
Needs a little bit of work.
Now the 84-year-old's work is known around the world. So you're sort of an expert at it, hey?
Well, a little bit, yeah.
But his age is catching up with him.
It gets to be a lot of maintenance.
Hall is selling his 14-piece collection in an auction that closes mid-month and retiring from restoration. But even after the machines go, Hall has no plans of slowing down.
You know, it doesn't take very much to keep me awful busy.
Allison Bamford, CTV News, Fillmore, Saskatchewan.
Quite the labor of love. That is our newscast for this Saturday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.